The Siege of Vienna, 1683, the decisive moment that stopped Ottoman expansion into Europe and saved Western civilization. The epic battle involved the largest cavalry charge in history, led by the Polish Winged Hussars, and marked the beginning of the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The empire at Europe's gates, the dawn of the Siege of Vienna. It was the summer of 1683, and the city of Vienna lay asleep under the darkest threat since the time of Attila. The Habsburg capital, nestled at the crossroads between East and West, was about to face one of the most feared military forces in the world, the Ottoman Empire. Led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, representative of Sultan Mehmed IV, a colossal army estimated between 150,000 and 200,000 men was marching through the Balkans with a single goal: to capture Vienna, open the way into the heart of Christian Europe, and finally realize the centuries-old dream of conquering Rome. The Ottoman Empire, then at the height of its territorial power, had expanded westward for centuries, engulfing kingdoms, cities, and cultures under its crescent banner. With Constantinople converted into Istanbul since 1453 and Hungary reduced to a protectorate, the fall of Vienna seemed inevitable. The city, however, was more than a stone fortress. It was a symbol. Its destruction would mean not only a military victory, but a civilizational blow, a brutal rupture in the backbone of Western Europe. In Vienna, the tension was palpable. Emperor Leopold I, fleeing to Passau with his court, left the city's defense in the hands of Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, who had fewer than 20,000 men and enough ammunition for only a few weeks. The city prepared as best it could. Walls were reinforced, moats expanded, citizens called to arms. But nothing seemed enough against the Ottoman avalanche advancing like a dark tide, devastating villages, burning crops, and leaving a trail of panic in its wake. Meanwhile, to the north and west, emissaries rode desperately in search of allies. The Holy League was beginning to take shape, an unlikely coalition of Christian kingdoms united by the common fear of annihilation. And among these powers, one name began to rise: John III Sobieski, King of Poland, a warrior monarch, renowned strategist, and commander of the fearsome Winged Hussars, the deadliest cavalry of the time. Vienna waited, besieged and silent. The Ottoman Empire, confident in its triumph, was positioning its cannons. And on the horizon, the fate of Europe hung in the balance. The siege tightens: fire, famine, and faith in Vienna. On July 14, 1683, the siege officially began. The sky over Vienna filled with smoke as Ottoman cannons roared against the city walls. For weeks, the artillery pounded relentlessly, blasting craters, toppling towers, and unleashing waves of terror among the civilians. Multicolored tents stretched across the Ottoman camp like a living city. Mobile palaces, canvas mosques, markets, kitchens, arsenals. Kara Mustafa commanded like a sultan in the field, arrogant and assured, convinced that victory was only a matter of time. Inside the walls, the situation grew desperate. Food ran short. Rats and moldy bread became meals. Epidemics broke out. But something unbreakable remained in the Viennese people: a stubborn faith, fueled by the fiery sermons of priests, the discipline of the defenders, and the hope of rescue from the north. With every Janissary assault, resistance stiffened. Tunnel after tunnel, the Ottomans tried to undermine the walls with explosives, but Viennese engineers dug counter-tunnels to intercept them. Across Christian Europe, church bells rang in prayer. The Holy League was finally solidifying, and with it, the Liberation Army was taking shape. Poles, Austrians, Bavarians, and Saxons marched under distinct banners, but with a shared purpose: to save Vienna. Leading them was John III Sobieski, crossing peaks and valleys with over 30,000 soldiers, among them the feared Winged Hussars. Wearing silver armor and giant stylized wings on their backs, made of wood and feathers, which whistled in the wind, the Hussars were both brute force and psychological warfare. As Kara Mustafa celebrated the beginning of a final tunnel toward Vienna's center, he ignored crucial signs. His scouts had vanished, his supplies were vulnerable, and atop a hill to the north, the Christian cavalry was already taking position. The decisive day, the greatest cavalry charge in history. It was the early morning of September 12, 1683. The battlefield still slept under a damp veil of fog when Kahlenberg Hill, northwest of Vienna, began to stir. Over 70,000 soldiers of the Christian coalition, Poles, Austrians, Bavarians, and Saxons, gathered under crossed banners. The mood was tense but solemn. King John III Sobieski, cloaked in blue, held mass at dawn with his generals. Before him, a prayer book and a sword. At his feet, the hope of a civilization. He raised his eyes to the sky and declared, "I came, I saw, and God conquered." When the sun broke through the clouds, the first signal for attack was given. Austrian and Bavarian infantry advanced slowly along the flanks, facing fierce resistance from the Ottomans. In response, janissaries, sipahis, and auxiliary units launched savage counterattacks to hold their ground. The hills and plains around Vienna became a battlefield of blood and gunpowder. Every meter of ground was contested with muskets, swords, and bayonets. The sounds of gunfire mixed with war cries in many languages: German, Polish, Turkish, Arabic, and Hungarian. In the center of the field, Kara Mustafa tried to reorganize his mobile empire. His tents, true palaces of silk and gold, were now surrounded by chaos. Contradictory orders, communication failures, and panic outbreaks among the auxiliary troops caused irreversible cracks in the lines. Many Ottoman soldiers, exhausted after 2 months of siege, were already showing signs of demoralization. The Christian troops, on the other hand, fought with the vigor of those who know they have no alternative. But the day's most dramatic moment was yet to come. Shortly after 4 p.m., trumpets sounded from the forest flanks. As if rising from the shadows themselves, around 18,000 Christian cavalrymen burst down the slopes. Led by the legendary Polish Winged Hussars, mounted on muscular horses and clad in gleaming armor, they advanced like a river of steel. The feathered wings on their backs, symbols of glory and terror, hissed in the wind, creating a supernatural sound that struck fear into their enemies. It was the largest cavalry charge in history. With lances raised in perfect formation, the Hussars and their allies thundered through the enemy lines with overwhelming force. The worn Ottoman ranks collapsed quickly. Troops fled in chaos. Cannons were abandoned. The cries of Allahu Akbar and Jesus Maria mingled in the smoky air, along with the hiss of sabers slicing the wind. From atop his tent, Kara Mustafa watched his army swept away like autumn leaves. When Sobieski broke through the enemy lines and entered Vienna's gates by nightfall, he was received as a liberator. Citizens wept and kissed his hands. Priests sang hymns. Church bells rang like thunder in triumph. The city on the brink of ruin had been saved, and Europe breathed a sigh of relief. For now, the fall of an empire, the birth of a legacy. The news of the defeat at Vienna spread across the continent like silent lightning. Kara Mustafa, humiliated, retreated with what remained of his once mighty army. Over 15,000 Ottomans lay dead in the fields around the city. Tons of supplies, weapons, gold coins, and relics were hastily abandoned. The meticulously arranged camps were now reduced to smoldering ruins. The Grand Vizier himself escaped with his life, but not for long. Back in Belgrade, under cold stares and growing distrust, Kara Mustafa faced the wrath of Sultan Mehmed IV. Despite his experience and past victories, the failure at Vienna was absolute. In December, his sentence was sealed. As was customary for high-ranking Ottoman dignitaries, he was executed by strangulation with a silk cord, a death reserved for nobles. His body, buried in an unknown location, became a symbol of an empire that had dared too much and fallen to its own pride. The Siege of Vienna marked not just the end of a campaign, but the beginning of the Ottoman decline. From that point forward, the military initiative shifted to the Christian powers. In the following years, the Holy League advanced through the Balkans, liberating territories occupied by the Turks for centuries. Belgrade, Budapest, and vast regions of Hungary were reconquered. Ottoman supremacy over Central Europe was broken, and with it, the aura of invincibility of the Crescent. On the Christian side, the victory also had lasting consequences. Vienna was rebuilt as a bastion of resistance, a symbol of cultural and religious resilience. King John III Sobieski returned to Poland in triumph, but was soon forgotten by the great European powers, which preferred to strengthen their own empires. Even so, the Polish legacy was etched in the chronicles of history. Without its hussars, Vienna would have fallen. Popular imagination embraced the event with fervor. Legend says the croissant, shaped like a crescent moon, was created by Viennese bakers to celebrate the Ottoman defeat. Coffee, found in the abandoned Turkish stores, became fashionable among European nobility. But beyond symbols, what remained was the memory of a people who resisted on the edge of the abyss, of generals who placed faith above doubt, of knights who crossed continents to defend an ideal. Centuries later, the Siege of Vienna remains a turning point, the moment when the tide of history receded, when the West, cornered, not only survived, but was reborn. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 was not merely a clash of armies, it was a defining struggle between empires, faiths, and worldviews, whose outcome reshaped the destiny of Europe and marked the beginning of the Ottoman retreat from the heart of the continent. It stands as a timeless testament to the power of unity in the face of annihilation.